Well, hello there. Welcome to the guest session of the free web development bootcamp. Thank you all so much for joining. If you're joining for the first time, hi, my name is Ramon. My friend Jess and I have been doing this bootcamp now for a week. But don't worry if you're interested in joining in and you're like, oh no, I've fallen behind. No, you have not. Let me send y'all a link into the chat if you're interested in seeing what we're up to, what this is all about. We're going through the free. Let me try that again. We're going through the free code camp web development certification, and we're just going through all the lessons. And we've got some guest sessions, which is what we're doing today. A couple links before we get started. You know me, I love me some links. Code of conduct. Please make sure that you're adhering to it. That's bit.ly/BWC-COC. We are on Discord and the Free Code Camp forum. There we go. So Discord is bit.ly/BWC-Discord-invite. For the forum, you can hop on over to bit.ly/BWC-bootcamp-forum. And for any of these YouTube videos, yes, they're recorded, so don't worry, you can come back. That's youtube.com/@bad website club. So that's me. I'm gonna not actually take up too much of y'all's time because we've got such an amazing guest on today. I'm gonna bring her on in just a second. Everyone, please say hello to Rizèl. Hey, Rizèl.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you so much for teaching us Git today. Probably gonna have your intro and your slides, I imagine. Is that right?
Yes,
Great.
I believe so.
Fantastic. Then I won't keep y'all. Here's what we're going to do, folks. I'm going to hop backstage. Please, 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 while we're watching Rizèl, ask your questions, write them in the chat. I will collect them for Rizèl so that she can answer them afterwards. And if you don't manage to get your question in now, don't worry. Rizèl's probably going to put up some contact methods and y'all can get in touch with her thusly. So that's me. Gonna share your slides, the intro to Git. I am so excited for this, and I won't keep y'all any further. All the best. Thank you so much, Rizèl.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramon, for having me to come here and talk to you all about Git and GitHub. I'm really excited to speak to y'all. If you do see me look like over here, it's because I have an additional monitor and I don't have like my streaming set up good yet. So please excuse me if I look over to the right a little bit. All right, so let's get into it without further ado. First, I just want to say like there are so many new terms and technologies when you're learning software engineering. Even when you're in software engineering, I continue to hear more and more terms that I'm like, what does that even mean? This is something that's a little bit embarrassing, but I like to share it so that people understand that, you know, at one point you may not know everything, and that's okay. When I was in a coding boot camp back in 2018, I was really confused with a couple of terms. One is I thought Java was short for JavaScript. Later on, I learned there are two different languages, and essentially the creator of JavaScript just kind of took inspiration from the name Java. And then I also thought that Git was short for GitHub. Um, but it turns out, like I just said, they're two different things. Java and JavaScript are two different languages, and Git and GitHub are not the same thing. And we'll learn more about how they're different as we go through the rest of this slide deck. Um, and I will also add that it's okay if you don't know things in the beginning, right? I was someone who was like, oh yeah, Git, and I'm thinking about GitHub, vice versa, but ends up like years later, I end up working at GitHub. So whenever you have a goal, write it down, speak it into existence, even if it seems impossible. Maybe you're like, one day I want to work at Google, or I want to build my own programming language. And maybe right now, because you're just starting off, it might not seem as possible. Don't worry, like you will grow. Um, just really quickly introducing myself, my name is Rizèl. I'm a developer advocate at GitHub. In the past, I was a software engineer for about 3 years. I did some directing, and I'm now an advisor at a nonprofit called G Code House, which teaches women of color and non-binary people of color to code. I really, really love like empowering and educating people about tech. And I haven't updated this slide. I really should. I have a passion and addiction to social media, not necessarily Twitter as much anymore. So if you are also on the internet, on the interwebs, go ahead and follow me at Black Girl Bites. I'm just trying to move my mouse over, but go ahead and follow me at Black Girl Bites. That's my handle on practically every social media platform, like Twitter, Blue Sky, Hackyderm, like / Mastodon, GitHub, Dev.to. I read a lot of blog posts, and also the same on TikTok and YouTube. Next. All right. So let's talk about Git and GitHub. What's the difference? Why are we using them? And I love the comment that I'm seeing in the chat, in the comments, that says not knowing is part of learning. Like, yes, that's the whole like thing. You start off not knowing, and then all of a sudden you start gradually growing. And it's a challenge at first, but then you look back and you're like, wow. But anyways, what is Git? Git is a version control system. And you might be like, okay, cool, but what's a version control system? And the way I like to, or the way that people describe it, is it enables you to record snapshots of your projects as you save changes that you make throughout history. And that still might sound a little bit confusing. So the way I like to like envision it for myself, and hopefully this helps you, is I like to think about my resume. This screenshot might be a little bit fuzzy or small for you all, but on the left hand, you can see that I have a million of versions of my resume. I have Bob Semple Rizèl resume. That's like my maiden name. I have copy of it, another copy. I have it in PDF format. I have Bob Semple Rizèl resume 8. There's like literally so many different versions from different jobs I've had as like an intern to a software engineer to a developer advocate. Sometimes when I was applying for scholarships in college, and it's really hard to figure out what's the difference between each of them. It's hard to keep track of them because I didn't give them good names. I just called them my name, resume. It's like, what's the difference between this one and the copy of it? And that is kind of the same experience in when you're coding, right? You have tons of files. You're working with even more people. Like in this case, it's just myself, but you're working with multiple people and you have multiple versions of the same file. That's very hard to keep track of, and it can be very confusing. So you're like, why would they be different versions of code in a large code base, right? Here are just a few of them. You're going to have even more than this, but you'll have your production version or your production copy. This is the version of like maybe the website or web app or mobile app that all your users are seeing and currently interacting with. So for Twitter, we're seeing X or whatever you want to say, right? But then someone might report a bug, right? They might say, hey, this is not exactly working the way it should be. So you take a copy, your own local copy of production, and you go ahead and you fix that bug or you add a new feature. So now your version of the code base is a little bit slightly different than what's in the production code base. Then the next step you want to do once you have something that you think is working is you'll put it in another version of the code base called staging. And this is the version where all developers put their updates and changes, and they just put it in an environment to make sure it's all working together before they put it to production. Because you might make a change and realize it breaks somebody else's change. So now you have these 3 different versions. The version that everyone can see and interact with that are users, the version that you have a particular change or update that you made, and then the staging version where developers within your company and yourself have updated or uploaded their code. And so there's these 3 different versions, and that can be really hard to keep track of manually. Here's the positive thing. Git manages all of that for you. You don't have to do it on your own. You don't have to do it manually. Back in the day, I think they had some ways that they were doing it manually. They were like emailing each other and stuff like that. You don't need to do that anymore. Thank God we are in this age of like good technology. Like this is a great time to be a software engineer. So here's what Git does for you. It tells you what the latest version is, who made the specific changes, and why those changes were made. And normally people use Git in this little window here. People call it a terminal if they're using Mac, or on Windows, you might call it command prompt. It looks super scary. It looks like the things that you see in movies when people are like, I'm hacking into the mainframe. But it's actually not. If you just take your time to read each thing, it's plainly telling you what's going on. And it's a way to kind of interact with your computer without having like a UI. Or sorry, I don't want to use terms that you all don't know, but like without having the buttons to click, a user interface. Okay, so we figured out what Git is a little bit. Let's figure out what GitHub is. And this is a web-based platform for developers to store their code on the cloud. So you might be like, what's the cloud? And it's basically a server on someone else's computer. You're saving it somewhere else that's not your own computer is like the best way that I can describe that. Okay, it sounded a little confusing, maybe a little technical, so I'll say it more plainly. GitHub is a website. That's all it is. And it uses Git to show you all the changes that you made to your code, and it's stored on the cloud, right? Stored on someone else's computer. To make it easier for you to share your code with others. So you have Git, you get a chance to be able to like put your code up to some place and see when changes were made and see what different versions there were. But GitHub provides a website for you to be able to see those changes reflected and to be able to share those changes with other people on the internet. So let's look at the website. Let's see what it looks like. Here's my GitHub profile, right? When I took this screenshot, I had 100 repositories. Well, let me not get into that. But here's my GitHub profile. I think of this, GitHub is kind of like a social media network for developers. Maybe some people will not agree, but I think it is, right? So we can see on my GitHub profile, we have like my name, my handle, my status. I say coding for fun. I have followers. I have like where I work and where I am located and my email address if you wanted to contact me. But most importantly, I have something called repositories. This literally is just meaning repositories is another way to say like projects or project folders. And inside of each of these repositories, you have the code that you wrote. So I have a project called Take Action that I was interacting with somebody on or collaborating with someone. And I have social card generator. Let's like zoom into that one a little bit more. So like I mentioned, a repository is like a project folder or project container. Just another way of saying it. So we've gone into the social card generator repository. And in here, we can see I have a couple of files. I have a file called readme.md. I have a file called generatesocialimage.js. It's just a JavaScript file. And I have another file called package.json, right? They might seem a little bit like overwhelming or scary, but they're all files that I needed to make this work. So if we like click into one of these files, we're going to click into generate social image. Let's see what we find there. And inside of generatesocialimage.js, we see a bunch of really bad code that I wrote. But this just gives you a better understanding of how to navigate the website, right? So inside of generatesocialimage.js, we just see that I started this function and it has a whole bunch of different random values on here. And the other thing is you can see the changes that were made to your code, to the different files and stuff like that within your repository. Here we can see, and we call these commits, right? So here we can see on July 10th, someone updated the README. Their name is MT Foley, or that's their handle. On July 12th, we see that B. Dougie made a merge to a pull request. And we see on January 4th, 2022, I made a fix. And it said it was committed 15 days ago, or 15 days from when I actually screenshot it. And I made another fix 5 days ago for that. So it kind of just gives you an idea of when a change was made, what the change was, and who made that change. And that's where we're incorporating Git, but it's being reflected in our website. There's other alternatives. I like to let people know about this. just because I started a job and I thought we were going to be using GitHub, and we were using something completely different. We were using something called Bitbucket. GitHub is just one of the most popular user interfaces for version control. When I wrote this talk, it said about 73 million users, but I think at this point we're at 100 million users. So we kind of have a monopoly. But so there's other ones. There's GitLab. These are all great. They all work fine. GitHub's just one of the most popular. There's GitLab. There's Bitbucket. There's Gitbucket. There's AWS Code Commit. There's SourceForge. All of these use version control and give you a user interface so you can better see it and visualize it. So how can you store your code on GitHub? We're going to kind of walk through this. If you're like, okay, this a little bit makes sense to me, but how do I get my code from my local computer up until the GitHub website? Step one, you want to create a GitHub account on github.com, and you want to install Git in your terminal. And this is just like a little screenshot of the login or the sign up flow that you'll go through. And in your terminal, you might have different installs. You got to go Google it because it depends on like if you have a Mac or Windows or Ubuntu on how you install it. But for this situation, I had to do sudo apt get install git. Next thing you want to do is you want to create a repository. If we have time, I think we will. I'm going to go ahead and actually like demo this rather than looking at slides. But you want to go ahead and create a repository. And that's your project container, just repeating that. And in your UI, you'll see a little plus sign. You'll click new repository and you'll fill out some of the information. You'll say, I'm the owner. Or yourself as the owner. You'll name the repository, you'll give it a description, and you can decide whether or not you want this to be public and be seen by anyone on the internet. And the whole point of that is so you can be able to share your code with other developer friends, or it also helps in getting you hired, because then hiring managers or recruiters or potential coworkers can see the work that you've been doing. Or you can keep it private if you're like, I'm not ready to show this to the world just yet. After that, step 3, there's going to be a couple of setup instructions from GitHub, and they're going to look like this. I will admit this. Basically, when I first started coding, I had no clue what any of these mean. Like Echo, my first website, Git init, Git add, Git commit. I had no clue what they meant. I just copied and pasted them until I got my code up there. And many people might not agree with me, but I think it's okay to not know what these mean at first, because after a while, they'll start to have meaning to you. At least that's the way I approach coding. At first, I might not know all the time why I'm doing something. I just know how like the means to an end, and then eventually I start being like, oh, the reason I'm doing this is because of such and such. But I will give you all a little insight to what each of these lines mean. It's okay if you don't remember them. Okay, so when you're saying echo, and then you have this hashtag my first website, and then these carrots readme.md, all that's doing is that's creating a readme file with the title my first website. A readme file is kind of the instructions for your GitHub repo, or a description for your GitHub repo, so that whenever someone goes to your project, they can be like, oh, I know what this project is about. And it'll help you as well. If you're like, why did I make this? You can go back and have a little bit of a description. So this essentially just creates that readme file for you. The next thing, and oh, here's a picture of it. So once I did that, all it does is like gives me that title, my first website. I can go in and edit it and add a little bit more. The next thing is git init. That is just saying, it's just initializing or indicating that your project or local folder will be using Git. You're essentially saying, let's get started with Git. And here's me just writing it in the terminal, me having a folder that's called my first website, and then I tell it Git init, and it's gonna spit out a whole bunch of words here. Don't be overwhelmed by them. You can read them, but it's essentially just saying like how it's going to set up the defaults for me. Next thing you want to do is git add. And that is adding a new or changed file to be pushed up to GitHub. So maybe in your folder that you have locally, you made a couple of changes to a couple of files, or you created new files. You want to add each of those files. So you'll say git add index.html, git add style.css, because you're saying, I want to add those and I want to put them to GitHub. Next thing you want to do is you'll have something called git commit -m first commit. Git commit saves the changes you made. So that's where it's going to say, at this time, Black Girl Bites made this change on, what's today? Monday, August 7th at 10:52 a.m. And then the -m allows you to insert a message or a note of why those changes were made. Because sometimes you may look back and you'll be like, why did I do this? I can't remember. So it's nice to like leave a little note and be like, what I'm doing here is I'm adding a button to style, or adding some styles to this button or something like that. The other thing you want to do is git branch -m main, and this enables you to name the different versions of your code. Remember how I talked about there being a local version and a staging version and a production version? Here you'll be like -m, maybe you'll say Rizèl's changing this button color, or you'll say production or staging or whatever. Name it something memorable, and your company or an open source project may have a naming convention system they want you to follow. So that's the whole point of this command. And the last command, git remote add origin, connects your local code to the repository on GitHub. So your repository is going to have like a URL or a link, and you're going to say, okay, this code that's on my computer, I want it to be in this specific repository that I created. And last but not least, you want to do git push. That is like your final thing. You're saying, all right, I am ready to go. I did all the different steps. I'm put it in my final decision, git push to that specific repository. And if you're not ready to use the terminal, I completely understand. The terminal can be a little bit scary. There's other alternatives. You can use GitHub Desktop, you can use GitHub's web editor, and you can even drag and drop files in the GitHub UI. And this is something I don't think I mentioned, and maybe I'll try to show it in a second, but VS Code, or your code editor, has a way for you to kind of just push and edit different files via Git without you actually having to type any terminal commands. But really quickly, before I do this, I just want to like go ahead and demo us push into GitHub. So let's say I have this file here. I'm going to just make a really simple file. And if you see me just tabbing and you're like, how is this code happening? I have a tool called GitHub Copilot. And that is kind of, it's an AI tool that'll just print out code for me. Okay, so we got a couple of things here. So I'll just say my first website with the bad website club. And maybe I'll say, what's up? I don't know. I just always write random stuff. Okay, so I want this code to, oh, look, we're famous. Love it. I want this code to be able to go up to GitHub. But first I need to go to github.com, and I'll zoom in just a bit more because it looks a little small. And at the top here, it'll give me a create new. It's like a little plus button. And I want to go ahead and create a new repository. And I'm going to say you want to create it as Black Girl Bites. And my repository name is first website for bad website club. And my description is, this is a demo for the bad website club. And I want this to be public so that y'all could see it. They can go ahead and, well, I won't do this for now. I'm going to go ahead and create the repository. I did all of the defaults that we'll need. And so we have our repository made. There's no code in it yet. And we've got to these commands again that look a little bit scary. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste each one of them. I always think this is a good starter. If you're new to coding, just I don't think it's bad to copy and paste. Some people, they feel very strongly about it, but I think it's okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and copy this. So we're going to press enter. And what that might do, we see that once I did that, it created a README file for me that says first website for BWC. Next thing I want to do is I want to do git init. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in, and it initialized an empty Git repository for me, essentially saying we want to use Git here. Next thing we want to do is we want to do git add. It's telling us to do git add readme, but we also want to do git add index.html because we also have that file to add. So I'm going to do git add index.html. Next thing we want to do now that we added our two files that we changed is do our commit message. So I'm going to go ahead and do git commit, and instead of first commit, I can say a little bit more of a description, created an index or an HTML file for BWC. Enter. Last but not least, or actually not even last but not least, we have a couple more to go, but we also want to create our branch or our version. I'm okay with leaving this at main. That's the default branch that people use. It's like an industry standard, but you can make your own. For now, out of laziness, I'm going to use main. I hope this is big enough for you all. And last thing, I keep saying last. Another thing I want to do is I'm going to do git remote add origin. This is connecting our code that's on my local computer to this website, right? Or to this repository. So we can see that the URL for this specific repository is github.com/blackgirlbytes/first website for BWC. And that's what it's going to do. It's just going to connect it there. It says git remote add origin for that URL. I'm going to copy it, paste it. And then now is the last one, is we're going to push it, the moment of truth. Going to go ahead and push this, and looks like it happened. It's just kind of printing out all the stuff that happened for us. It's like writing the objects and pushing and all this stuff that can look a little overwhelming, but that's okay. Once I refresh the page here, we'll see that our index.html got added. We have the code that we wrote, the HTML code, and we also have our readme.md. So that is what we have. I hope that wasn't too overwhelming for you all, but I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that. And it's okay if you have to go back and rewatch this and try again. It took me a really long time to get really comfortable with Git and GitHub. And if you do want to connect with me in the future, my handle again is at blackgirlbytes with a Y. I'm mostly on Twitter, GitHub, and dev.to.
Thank you so much, Rizèl. Folks in the chat, can we please take a moment to send all of the emojis, all of the claps, the hearts, the sparkles, the thank yous to Rizèl? That was amazing. I'm super thankful. I love seeing a good intro to Git. I love seeing it in action. It makes me feel significantly safer to see someone else do it live. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. That's how I do it. It's not too different from how, the experts do it. Great. Well, I know I'm really, really grateful. I know we want to keep your time is valuable. We don't want to keep you for too long. Let me bring up a couple questions that people have brought up. They're all kind of related. Okay. Got one from Noob Programmer asking how we can do these Git features from inside VS Code. Because you were kind of doing them in VS Code in the terminal, but wondering if there's a way of doing them. Yeah.
I completely forgot I was going to show that too. Okay, here's an example. So let's say I added one more thing, another paragraph that says making changes. I don't know. And on the left-hand side, you see where the little one is. That is like a source control tool built inside of VS Code. So you can go over here and you can do a couple of things. You can make a commit from here and add your commit message. You can, if you hit these 3 drop downs, you can be able to do a pull request or do changes this way. there's so many different things that you can do rather than interacting with the terminal. So I'll show you all. Like maybe I can just add this commit message and push it up so I can say, just making a quick change. And if I press commit, and it's just going to say, oh, you didn't stage these changes. Do you want to? Yes, I do. And I can press sync changes. And that reminds me that what that's going to do is just do a push. And once it's done, if I refresh the page, or if I it's going a little slow.
It's thinking. It's thinking.
It's thinking. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Now we've seen that it got pushed up, this new change of making changes. So you can just use the VS Code editor rather than the terminal. Sorry.
Fantastic. So that means that there's different choices for being able to interact with Git. And it seems like this VS Code way of doing it is kind of the equivalent of using the terminal. And there's no right or wrong way, I assume.
There's no right or wrong way.
Amazing. Thank you. Cool. We got a question from Aaron asking, can we show different ways to do pull requests using Git? I always just do it in the browser because doing it in the terminal always takes me Googling it first.
To be honest, I mostly do it in the browser too. I could show how to do it in the browser, but I don't think I don't think I do it in the terminal much. Ramon, do you do it in the terminal?
I don't think, no, I've always used the browser for it. Do we want to, I've got a quick question if I may. I think you might have covered it, but just to make sure I'm on the right page, a pull request is sort of like, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is a pull request a way of like proposing a set of changes to someone else's repository or something like this?
Yes, that's perfect. And I didn't go that over. You're right. But yeah, if you want to add some changes to somebody else's code, you might do something like a pull request so they can review it before you just add your changes in there. And actually, Learner 0418 mentioned that you can create a PR using the GitHub CLI. I probably should already have known that.
Do you know what, Rizèl? We're live. Shall I go ahead and make a pull request?
Yes, go ahead. Do you want to share your screen or do you want?
Yeah. Good idea. Okay. Cool. So here's the cool thing, friends. We can do this I'm going to do this directly from the browser because, this is all ad hoc and maybe I'm a tiny bit lazy. So share my screen. Yep. Window. I gotta make sure I got the right one. Yes. Hello. Now we're on my computer. So I'm looking here at Rizèl's first website for BWC index.html. We can see the latest commit, just making a quick change. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask Rizèl to bring in a couple changes from me. And you can do this directly in GitHub with this pencil icon, fork this repository and edit the file. And what's cool about it, I need to make a fork. First of all, fork this repository. A fork is kind of like making my own copy. Is that correct?
Yes, that's perfect.
Amazing. Cool. So now I can edit the file directly in GitHub, which is cool. I'm going to make some, and I have the power to write whatever I like. I'm going to make another paragraph. We've been learning this in the bootcamp. And let's say, isn't Rizèl, I have full power to write whatever I like.
Oh, thank you.
Isn't Rizèl the best, friends? So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead. I can preview it in GitHub and see like, cool, these are going to be the changes. This is going to be the chunk of changes that are going to come in. And if I click on commit changes, I can see here, and you'll see very similar to how it's done in VS Code. We have a commit message. I'm just going to make this a little bit more elaborate. Add a little love from BWC. So commit changes. So I've clicked that button. And now we're comparing the base repository, which is Rizèl's, and my head repository, which is my fork. And we can see there, we've got one commit that's going to come in, which is this here, and a little bit of encoding stuff.
Yeah.
Don't worry too much if you see this. If it looks the same, it's just like this sort of symbol here is usually like, something encoding. that UTF-8 stuff that we learned in the boot camp.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't want to keep us for too long. I'm going to go ahead and create my pull request, add a little love from BWC. Thank you, Rizèl. Da, da, da. So I'm going to scroll down here and click on create pull request. So now that that's done, we're going to see that I've opened a pull request on Rizèl's repository. You're going to see that comment from me, I'll add a little love from BWC. And how about I pass it back to you, Rizèl? You
Okay.
could review it live. So I'm going to go back to your screen.
Yes. I don't know how to add it. Okay,
There we
perfect.
go.
I'll zoom in a little bit more because yours was nicely zoomed in. Okay. All right, so we can see now I have a little like number one sign kind of saying like you have one pull request. So let's see who it's from, and it's from Ramon, adding a little love from BWC. I can go ahead and see like, okay, cool. He made this change. He made a comment, and I can see what files that he changed as well. And we can see, okay, on line 16, he added the line paragraph isn't Rizèl the best friends. So I can either, when I click review changes, I can either leave a comment saying, this was awesome, or I can request changes if I thought maybe this wasn't like what exactly I wanted, or here's a way that it could be approved, or I can also just approve it. I think it's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and hit approve and submit review. It's a little cut off because it's a little too big. So now that it's approved, I can go ahead and merge the pull request, which is just saying put these changes that Ramon made into my own repository. So once I do merge and confirm merge, we'll see that my original code now has the new changes that Ramon brought in.
Look at me, I'm contributing to open source. Amazing. So while we're here, I might have a short question.
Mhm.
What do we do when we want to go back to your VS Code and continue working on this website?
Oh, do you mean? Let me
Yeah.
see if I make sure. Okay, cool.
Is it
So
automatically brought in, or what do we have to do?
it's not. That's a good question, right? So if we go here, we can see that locally I don't have those changes, the change on line 16. You can use this. I haven't actually, let's see if
I've
we
never used this.
pull. Let's see. Usually I type git pull, and then it'll pull in all the changes, but let's just do this for fun. Let's see if we press pull, what happens. All right, cool. That was like so quick. By pressing get pull, you are able to see on line 16 that change was brought into my local computer.
Amazing. Oh, I want to point out one that learner wrote here, git pull origin master, which is mostly right. We're writing git pull into the terminal, and the remote or the copy online that we want to pull from is origin, which Rizèl added, but master is not the name of the branch we're pulling from, but rather from main.
Yes. Yeah. And I actually have a tip on how to figure out what branch you're on, or a couple of tips. Do you mind moving learner's comment? Yeah, right here in your VS Code editor, you get a chance to see what branch you're on. Sometimes I forget. The other thing you can do as well is type git branch, and it'll print out that you're on the main branch. But this is a nice way.
Interesting. You know, what I usually do is I type in git status.
Oh.
And that'll show me like of what files I'm on, and then their git branch main.
Interesting. I've never done that.
Amazing. Aaron here says, I use GitHub Desktop, which is totally a very valid alternative, officially from GitHub, right?
Yes, officially from GitHub. Yeah, in the slide deck, I was like, feel free to use that. If that's what works for you, that's what works for you. For some reason, I find it, I have a hard time with it, but I think it's because I learned the terminal first. I'm like, get nervous when I'm using it.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, what really we should take away from all of this is that there is no right or wrong way. Just use what feels best for you.
Yep, I agree.
Ahmad has a question that I really like. What if you made some not committed changes and then pulled the changes from GitHub?
Oh, you might, correct me if I'm wrong, Ramon, you might experience a pull request. I mean, not a pull request, a merge conflict. And it might, what you should probably do, in my opinion, is You might experience a merge conflict if the changes were both on the same lines, right? So
Correct.
if locally you made a change on line 16, but then you pull in some changes that were also on line 16, it might say like, oh my gosh, we don't know which one is the source of truth or which one to pick. So what I would do if I were you is make sure I push those new changes up to GitHub, or make sure I like put it on a different branch or something like that to save those changes before you pull in any new changes.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. If you're, and there, of course, I said different ways to work with this. What's it? It's not one size fits all. Yeah, like you can find what works best for you for that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Learner says Git what changed is really great. I've never heard of that.
What is that? Let me see.
Give us please do give us a link as well. Or is that? Well,
Oh,
would you look at that? Is that the same as Git log? No, it's
yeah.
not.
Let's see the difference. It looks similar, but it's not the same.
No. So the thing with Git log, I think it's like the last couple of commits, and then it puts you back in the terminal. Because right now, Git log, you're running, you're still in it. I don't know if you use Git log a lot. So to quit, you just pressed Q. Is that correct?
Yeah, I pressed Q to get out of it. My bad.
No, you're fine. You're fine. This is great. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Let's see what other questions we got, because I am very conscious of your time. So we got these two out of the way. Cool. Ahmed has another question, which is, this was towards the end after you did the demo. But so we don't need to do all of these steps on every single change we made later, right?
That's correct. You don't need to continue doing those. That's just for like your initial, like making your first, putting the code up to the repository for the first time. But after that, you might just be doing git add and git commit and git push.
Amazing. Well, if no one else has any questions, I think we've reached the end here. If you have one coming in, don't worry, I still got some blabbling to do. So first off, I'm going to say, Rizèl, thank you so much. That was amazing, as always. You are so talented at explaining and making Git approachable, which for me is so important because it can be really daunting at first. And I think you do a great job of like,
scary.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes I still get a little bit intimidated by it.
Me too.
So folks, let me tell you what's coming up next, because we do have another stream coming up today. We've got our partner stream with Couchbase coming up, who are going to be doing the free code camp project we did earlier today with Jess. They're going to be doing it in the real world, so to speak. So I'm going to put a link to that in the chat. Partner stream. So that's starting in about 45 minutes. Don't miss it. Here we go. Partner stream, doing free code camp in the real world. Rizèl, to get in touch with you, folks should reach you through Black Girl Bytes. You're on all the platforms. Yes. Is there anything you'd like to give a shout out to that we might have missed?
Shout out to you.
Come on.
This was a great stream, but I don't have anything at the top of my mind. But yeah, thank you so much. And it's really great that you and Jess are doing the Bad Website Club, and also Naya. It's really important work. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, don't miss it. It's going to be great. Thank you so much, Rizèl. We'll see you around, and everybody else, see you in the partner stream.
Bye.
See ya.
Okay.